The Indian Air Force is considered to be one of the most dynamic air forces. Although it has operated fighter jets from Russia, France, and the United Kingdom, one country in particular has been left out, despite the fact that it has developed some of the best fighter jets. That country is the United States of America. Lately, the United States has been making an effort to bring India's attention to its fighter jets in each and every manner that they can. As an example, the Lockheed Martin has approached India with the intention of selling its upgraded version of the F-16, which is known as the F-21 and is stated to be specifically customized for the Indian Air Force by Lockheed Martin. Also, it has made an offer to provide Boeing F/A-18 Super Hornets to the Indian Navy in the hope that they would accept it. The Indian military establishment, on the other hand, has not showed any interest in purchasing any of these aircraft up to this point. So, why does India seem to have so little interest in those fighter planes built in the United States? To find the answer, we have to look at different points in time. In the 1950s, India had just gotten its independence from Britain. At that time, India didn't have many resources to build an air force. However, it actively seeking new fighter aircraft to modernize its fleet. Beginning in the 1950s, France provided India with the Ouragan and Mystere fighter bombers. And as India had been a British colony until 1947, the British government offered India favorable terms for the purchase of their aircrafts and other defense equipments. This included naval ships, Centurion tanks, transonic fighters like Hawker Hunter and the de Havilland Vampire, and Folland Gnat subsonic fighters. From France, India bought AMX-13 light tanks, Alizé planes, and Alouette helicopters. The US only sent 106mm recoilless guns and Fairchild Packet cargo aircraft planes. Most of the electronic equipment licensed to be manufactured in India were from British and French firms. Familiarity with British equipments may have also played a role in the decision to purchase British aircrafts. For instance, the Royal Indian Air Force, which was part of the British Empire's armed forces and provided support to the British military in several theaters of the war, including Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. During the Burma campaign, the Royal Indian Air Force played a pivotal role in aiding ground troops against the Japanese. This was the RAF's most important contribution to the war effort. Pilots of the Royal Indian Air Force operated a range of aircraft, including fighters, bombers, and transport aircraft. They flew missions that included air defense, ground strikes, reconnaissance, and troop and supply transfer. In addition to its operational duty, the Royal Indian Air Force was instrumental in training people from other Commonwealth nations throughout the war. Before being dispatched to other theaters of war, many pilots and ground personnel from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and other Commonwealth nations trained with the Royal Indian Air Force in India. Overall, during World War II, the Royal Indian Air Force contributed significantly to the Allied war effort. During the 1950s, the United States was certainly a major military power with advanced fighter technology, like for example the F-86 Sabre, F-104 Starfighter, and B-57 Canberra. The transonic fighter Sabre and the supersonic fighter Starfighter were much better than the British fighter Hawker Hunter and de Havilland Vampire jets, which the Indian Air Force was using. The F-86 Sabre, F-104 Starfighter, and B-57 Canberra bomber planes were all designed and built during the Cold War, a period of intense military competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. These aircraft was designed to meet the needs of the U.S. military in this context, and they incorporated the latest technologies and design features of the time. The F-86 was designed to be fast, maneuverable, and have a high rate of climb, making it a superior aircraft in air-to-air combat with more advanced engine and avionics system than the British Hawker Hunter, which gave it an edge in performance. Not to mention, the F-104 Starfighter was a high-performance, supersonic interceptor designed to fly at extremely high altitudes. Its powerful engine and advanced aerodynamic design made it faster and more maneuverable than most other aircraft of its time. On the other hand, the British Hawker Hunter and Fallen Gnat were both great aircraft, but they had distinct design goals. The Hunter was developed for air-to-air combat, ground assault, and reconnaissance. It was proficient in these missions, but not as specialized to air combat as the F-86 or F-104. So, why didn't India buy the better American-made fighters instead of the British ones? The F-86 Sabre, F-104 Starfighter, and B-57 Canberra bomber plane were all sold to Pakistan. However, just like India, Pakistan faced many challenges in the early years of its existence, including political instability, economic problems, and military challenges. So how did Pakistan get these powerful fighter jets from the United States? In the 1950s, the US preferred Pakistan over India to contain the Soviet Union for various reasons. Pakistan was strategically placed between the Middle East and South Asia, making it a possible ally against Soviet expansionism. The country shared borders with both Iran and Afghanistan, two important countries in the region. Throughout the Cold War, the US saw Pakistan as a key country in this regard and provided military aid and assistance to help build up its military and security capabilities. India was moving towards Cold War non-alignment and closer contacts with the Soviet Union. The US became wary of India and looked to Pakistan as a regional ally. The US saw Pakistan as a potential market for US goods and services. This made the country an attractive partner for the US to build alliances with. We can see the same kind of pattern in the 21st century, but this time, the US is going after China's aggressive imperialism with the help of India and other democracies in the vicinities.
He actually speaks very good English, we just don't want to talk.
The US and other Western countries was engaged in a global struggle against the Soviet Union and viewed Pakistan as a key ally in this conflict. They were willing to overlook human rights abuses and undemocratic practices and atrocities in East Pakistan in order to maintain the strategic alliance. Because the US was worried that a Bengali nationalist victory in East Pakistan would create a pro-Soviet state. So, the US and other Western nations were hesitant to criticize the Pakistani government for its activities in East Pakistan for fear of drawing Pakistan closer to the Soviet Union. The US imposed an arms embargo on India in the aftermath of the 1962 India-China War. The arms embargo remained in place for several decades, with occasional exceptions for non-lethal military equipment such as transport aircraft and communications gear. The primary reasons for the arms embargo was the U.S. government's desire to maintain a balance of power in the region. The U.S. was concerned that providing military aid to India in the aftermath of the war would upset the balance of power between India and Pakistan, which was a key U.S. ally in the region at the time. The embargo had a significant impact on India's military capabilities and contributed to a sense of isolation and vulnerability, and also caused a trust deficit with U.S. in the country. The embargo also strained U.S.-India relations for several years. The embargo lasted until 2001, when it was lifted as part of a broader U.S. effort to build closer ties with India. The arms embargo created an opportunity for the Soviet Union to provide military assistance to India. The Soviet Union saw India as an important strategic partner in the region, and providing military assistance was a way for the Soviet Union to increase its influence and gain a foothold in South Asia. The Soviet Union provided India with a range of military equipment, including tanks, fighter planes, and other advanced weapons systems that no other Western countries are willing to give India, and also provided technical assistance and training to the Indian military. India received its first batch of supersonic Soviet MiG-21 fighters in 1964. The Soviet MiG-21 was one of the most widely made and exported fighter planes in history. Many Western countries were afraid of it because it was fast, agile, and had high-tech features.
Our wing was selected to find and attack and kill MiGs. That was our wing's motto. They were very fast, very nimble, very capable adversary. So we were very aware of that. We were cognizant of what the MiG-21 could do if you weren't careful.
During the Vietnam War and the 1971 war, the fighter showed how well it could do its job. The Vietnamese MiG-21s were able to win several air battles against U.S. planes, including the F-4 Phantom. And during the 1971 war, the MiG-21's abilities were put to the test. The Indian MiG-21 beat several fighters from the Pakistani Air Force, including the F-104 Starfighter, the Shenyang F-6, the F-86 Sabre, and a Lockheed C-130 Hercules. Pakistan took all of its F-104s out of service soon after the end of the war. However, during the Arab-Israeli War, the MiG wasn't as successful as it was in 1971 and the Vietnam War. In the 1980s, the U.S. provided Pakistan with superior F-16 aircraft because they had been friends for a long time. But in reality, the fighters were given to Pakistan mainly to maintain U.S.'s influence in the region and to balance against other powers like India and China. And therefore, India purchased the Mirage 2000 fighter planes from France. The Mirage 2000's advanced avionics and weapon systems made it an attractive choice for the Indian Air Force. It was deemed suitable for India's requirements, especially against Pakistani F-16s. By 2001, India was using planes from Russia like the MiG-21, MiG-27, MiG-25, Sukhoi 30, etc., as well as planes from France like the Mirage 3 and Mirage 2000, and planes from the UK like different Hawker planes and even the famous Sea Harriers. But no American fighter aircraft. Since the US lifted its arms embargo on India in 2001, it has been more than 20 years since the US hasn't been able to persuade India to buy its fighter jets. And there are many reasons for that. Like cost of such systems, and the US is reluctant to transfer of technology, but in this video we're going to look at other factors. One reason could be that Pakistan has been using the fighters for decades. The version that the US tried to give to India is much more advanced than the one that Pakistan uses. But that doesn't mean that Pakistani F-16s are obsolete. It is true that a country that has been operating a particular fighter jet for a longer period of time may have an advantage over a country that has only recently inducted the same type of fighter jet. This is because the country with more experience in operating the jet will have had more time to train their pilots and ground crew, develop tactics and strategies for using the jet in combat, and identify and address any issues or problems with the jet. And it is highly unlikely that the US would allow India to integrate Russian weapons systems into the F-21 fighter jet. India's decision to choose the French Rafale fighter jet over American fighters like the F-16, F-15, and F-18 was based on a careful evaluation of a range of factors, including performance, cost, and strategic considerations. The Rafale is a highly capable fighter jet that is known for its agility, range, and weapons load. The Rafales surpassed competitors in combat performance in India's evaluation process. However, the Rafale was not the cheapest option, but its whole life cost, including maintenance and operations, made it a cost-effective decision. India's choice was also strategic. The Rafale agreement strengthened India's military alliance with France. The Rafale purchase led India to diversify its military procurement outside Russia. It is likely that the US is pitching its F-35 fighter jet to India, and by showcasing the fighter at Aero India 2023, the US is likely trying to demonstrate the capabilities of the aircraft and encourage India to consider purchasing it. However, Turkey was sanctioned and was expelled from the F-35 program in 2019 after refusing US requests that it should not obtain the Russian S-400 ground-based air defense system, which might jeopardize the stealth jet's security. There were also political reasons behind banning Turkey from acquiring any F-35s. After all, the NATO member state willingly sought out an advanced Russian air defense system designed to counter NATO systems when it had the option of purchasing Western alternatives. But it's also important to remember that the US and India have had a strategic partnership for many years. For example, the US has not yet sanctioned India for buying S-400 systems. But it did so quickly when a NATO member, Turkey, did the same thing. This shows how serious the US is about building closer ties with India, and it's working to strengthen defense ties and increase cooperation in a number of areas. The US might decide to take a more nuanced and practical approach to India's purchase of the S-400, taking into account broader strategic concerns and the complexity of the US-India relationship. But India may not choose F-35s for its Air Force. India is able to make more advanced fighter jets than those of the fourth generation. For example, the LCA Tejas is a 4.5 generation, all-weather, multi-role fighter aircraft. Most of its 4.5 generation fighter jets have advanced avionics and weapons systems, such as radars like Uttam-AESA radar, electronic warfare systems, and weapons that are guided to hit their targets with great accuracy. They might also be able to hide from enemy radar, but not as well as fifth-generation fighters. The DRDO, has also made a number of guided missiles and precision-guided weapons, such as the Astra Beyond Visual Range Air-to-Air Missile, the BrahMos Supersonic Cruise Missile, and the Smart Anti-Airfield Weapon. These weapons systems give Indian fighter jets more offensive power so they can hit their targets from farther away and with more accuracy. India is capable of making radar-absorbent materials for its fighters. RAMs are materials that absorb and reduce the radar signature of an aircraft, making it more difficult for radar systems to detect and track the aircraft. Overall, India has made a lot of progress in developing advanced avionics and weapons systems for its fighters, and it continues to invest in this area to improve its capabilities. Many of the advanced avionics, weapons systems, electronic warfare systems, and other technologies that India has made are meant to be used on the HAL AMCA program, which is India's fifth-generation program. The UTOM active electronically scanned array radar, for example, was made just for the AMCA. It is expected that the UTOM radar will have better detection and tracking abilities, as well as the ability to jam and trick enemy radar systems. This leaves little hope for American stealth fighter jets to debut in IAF. India and the US might not be able to work together to make a fifth-generation fighter because it would be hard and expensive, and India's defense budget is already tight. Whether or not the US and India go ahead with a joint development program for a new fifth-generation fighter would depend on a number of things, such as their strategic priorities and whether or not the program is technically and financially possible. India is currently building its own fifth-generation fighter from scratch. All India needs now is a strong engine to power its AMCA fighter.